What?
Ship Island is an island off the coast of Gulfport and Biloxi. Originally it was a big long island with giant trees, wild pigs, deer. According to Great Grandma Williams, it even had some Florida painters. She called them painters. Florida Panthers that used to come down and lick the lagoon water because it was fresh water in the middle.
Yeah.
And they built a house out there, and my dad's older sisters and both brothers were born there. And in about 1919, you can look it up, there was a huge hurricane that hit Biloxi and Gulfport, killed tons of people. Because back then they didn't have warnings. It was like a category 3, and it just wiped out Biloxi and Gulfport. And there was a big apartment complex everybody stayed in and were partying, and all those people died. Almost everybody in the apartment complex died.
Oh, man.
Well, what happened is the hurricane was so bad, they came to shore because they knew it was coming. It leveled all the trees, destroyed their house, and it broke the island in half. Basically, it washed out their lagoon.
Wow.
And they had no more fresh water, so they decided to build a house inland. I think it's on 7th Street is where they built. And that's when Grandpa Williams, not my dad, but his dad, built the shrimp boat right there in the front yard. It was 70 feet long. He went to a sawmill, and sawmills have one big long beam inside the sawmill to keep it straight, and they mount their saws on that beam. That's called the main keel beam. Well, he took that same beam and used it, which was made out of solid oak. It was like 12 inches tall and about 5 to 6 inches wide, and that's what you put down in the bottom of your boat, and you build your boat up from that. That's the strength at the bottom of your boat.
Right.
All your ribs
It's
come
like
up
the
both
spine of the ribs.
Yeah, the spine of the ribs.
Okay.
So he built this big shrimp boat, and then they rolled it down on logs down to the ocean and launched it, and they started shrimping. That's when he went into the shrimping business.
Oh, okay.
Who was Indian? He was, or his wife?
No, he was Indian, and so was my grandma. They were both
But
Seminole.
your grandma, how did she become an Indian?
She wouldn't be coming in. She was born in the Seminole Indian tribe, along with her husband, which she hadn't met yet, of course. And when there was a big war down in the Everglades, the Americans went down there and wanted the Indians out of there. So they never killed a lot of Seminole Indians because they could hide too good in the Everglades. They all migrated up to the Carolinas and Mississippi. And Grandma ended up in, she told me, North Carolina originally.
He ended up in a cotton field?
Well, it was in North Carolina, as a young girl picking cotton. And then her family.
They blended in with the blacks.
Right, they worked along with the blacks. They made Indians and blacks slaves. They didn't care who you were as long as you were dark skinned.
A lot of the African Americans went to the Seminole Indian tribes because they befriended them.
Right. So she told me she rode a wagon from North Carolina to Gulfport and went to work at the Davis plantation. And there's a picture on the wall there with a whole bunch of slaves and a bunch of young kids, and she pointed, that's me right there when I was 6 years old.
Oh, she used to work
at the Jefferson Davis
Davis plantation.
It was a plantation at the time, a cotton plantation.
Okay.
It wasn't like a...
I see.
It was hundreds of acres, but they reduced it down to 10 acres and made it a museum.
Oh.
So then she met Grandpa eventually. I don't know how they met. I've never heard the story.
In Mississippi.
Somewhere in Mississippi, and he was a fisherman. Well, once he got his shrimp boat, they were very poor, but they always had tons of food because he would catch a lot of shrimp, and he would barter it for fruits and vegetables and other things. You know.
Oh, okay.
He'd go to a place. Hey, I've got 100 pounds of shrimp. I need flour. I need this. I need that.
So did they actually have a house on Ship Island?
Yes. So did then two of the sisters built houses out there too.
Oh wow.
And they all got destroyed. And then one of them moved back to the island even after the hurricane and rebuilt her house. Well, then there were concessions out there for a long time. They had a motel out there that slept 12 people. You used to be able to spend the night out there. They had a motel and a little country store.
Really?
And a fish camp where you bought all your supplies to go fishing.
And the fort was just like a tourist attraction.
Oh.
And it became a tourist attraction. And then some cousins had a boat that took 150 people out. And they'd go out 4 times a day and bring the people out to go, sunbathing and swimming and whatever. There wasn't much waves, but surfers would try to surf out there.
Yeah.
The waves right in Gulfport were like miniature, but once you got past that island, which blocked them, they were bigger. And you used to have to travel through the swampy area to get out to the ocean. Well, now they built a big boardwalk out there, and you just walk right out. And that's where the fort is, Fort Massachusetts. And my dad said when he was a young boy, they used to go out and visit it all the time. Well, when his dad would go shrimping daily, he'd pull into the pier there, drop him and Herman off, and push them through the little gun portholes, which were about 2.5, 3 feet tall and about 2 feet wide, where the cannons used to stick out. All the cannons were removed during World War I and II, and they used the metal to make, war products. But they left 2 or 3 cannons up there on the roof. And Grandpa said that people complained for months as they were blowing the cannons up. They would blow them up right there, and then take the chunks of steel and load them onto boats. And finally, the contract ran out, and there were 2.5 cannons left, so they left the chunks up there, and 2 whole cannons are still there. Well, Grandpa said that when his dad would show up late, it'd get dark, and they'd be seeing ghosts in that fort, walking around, all the people that had died out there during the war.
What?
Yeah.
No war ever made it to that.
No war ever made it to that fort, but that's where we staged the French and Indian War. The Indians took over, and the French took over New Orleans. Well, our government decided they wanted New Orleans, so they used that fort to stage the soldiers and take them by boat over.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But we lost. The French kept it that time.
Oh.
Yeah. And those cannons were originally built during the Civil War so that people wouldn't attack the South from the Gulf. But actually, they never tried. The cannons were never used. They could shoot them, but they found out the farthest distance the cannon would shoot was still about 2 miles from the shore.
Well, how come the Williams don't have the rights to the island anymore?
They did have the rights to it on for years, but they couldn't afford to maintain the fort. So
but now there's another family that wasn't part of ours that does it?
A couple families have rights to it. Our family still has the rights to set up concessions out there if they want.
What? Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
No way.
There's a hamburger stand out there owned by one family member. I don't know, it's some long-lost cousin. And then there's a bait shop out there. And
what about build? Are you allowed to build out there?
No.
Why?
Because it's a state park now.
Yeah, but can't you say, hey, this was the original...
maybe. You'd have to
the original,
do some red tape.
What it looked like when we lived there.
Well, the last time I went there...
The family house.
A lot of the trees are growing back finally after 25 years.
Can't you say, hey, we want to recondition the land the way it was?
I don't know how you would do it.
Build the lake again and...
All I know is the fort's now owned by the state.
Yeah, it's owned by the state.
Now, originally, we would charge a quarter to get in there. Anybody wanted to go in, they had somebody sitting at the front door, and they'd charge them a quarter, and it was free. Just for a quarter, you walked in, and they made like $100 a day doing that. Now you go, and they take you on a guided tour for free. Because
how many times did you really go out there?
Me, about half a dozen times.
With Grandpa?
Yeah, I went out when I was 8 the first time, and then when I was 10, 12, when I was 14.
So you kind of grew up out there, too.
And then when I went down to Mississippi with Ryan, when he was 6 months old, we went out there.
Yeah.
We went going across the country.
And then you guys went when we came across the country, and our cousins took us up in the helm of the boat, and we got this. You got to steer it, didn't you?
I think so.
I don't remember that.
Todd did.
I just remember going out there with Grandpa.
Yeah, but we went out there, you and I and Todd and Ryan.
Didn't you
And,
go
Yeah,
with Jeremy one time?
I went out. I remember going with you, Dad.
what'd you
Did
say?
you go out with Jeremy?
Yeah, and then Jeremy's the last time I was there, Jeremy was with me. He got to see it.
You finally got to go.
And we were reaching around. There was a hole next to one of the gun turret areas. And Jeremy reached down in there and pulled out a bunch of washers from Civil War. You could tell they were handmade.
No way.
I've still got a couple of them in my dresser at home.
That's cool.
You're not supposed to take stuff from there, but
I have a bottle collection.
all those bottles came from there.
I have a tea kettle.
See, Dad's
You
brother, Dad's
Oh,
brother
silver
Herman.
tea kettle.
Herman used to go out, and every time there was a hurricane, he would go out to there and find all kinds of stuff that
The
he
tea
wrote.
kettles from
The sand would erode away, and he'd find
the
stuff.
60s,
Oh, really?
1700s.
He found buttons,
It's
guns,
made in New York.
swords. He found little pipes that were made out of ceramic. They used to smoke their tobacco in ceramic pipes.
Really?
He found the best find he found, besides my cannon shell, was a little silk purse, about 4 inches by 4 inches, with a gold clasp on it. And he opened it up, and there was 3 dime-sized coins in there. and they were so thin from erosion.
They were gold?
They were silver. But you could read the date on one of them. It was 1786. I remember that.
No way. Where are those at?
We donated them to that museum in Mississippi, and that museum they had to evacuate it and take everything with them, and they never rebuilt
I wonder
it.
if I should.
What?
donate
They
it
never
to them.
rebuilt the museum?
They had some bottles that we gave them. They had the okay. Sherman used to go out there, and over the years, people were taking apart the wood off the dungeon doors and using them as firewood. You know, they'd find chunks missing here and there because there was no trees out there anymore, so people were using that as firewood. Anything they could find made out of wood.
Oh, that's terrible.
So Herman went out there, and there was 3 brass hinges on the doors. He started unbolting them, and he couldn't get them off the wall, so he sawed the hinges, and you can still see where they were sawed. And he took the whole dungeon door apart because it weighed about 1,000 pounds, and he took it to his garage and reassembled it and kept it. It was in the rafters of his garage for years.
Grandpa?
No, Herman, his brother. In that garage, he also had that cannon shell, thousands of bottles. He had everything he'd ever found was in boxes in that garage, coins, everything. So when he died, he had left everything in there to Dad, my dad. So Grandpa went down one time in his truck, and he brought back the dungeon door because he was building his house in Hemet. Brought all the bottles.
But then he didn't end up using the door?
He assembled the door, and it was the front gate for about a year. Right there, when you went into the pool area.
Said it was too heavy.
It was too hard to open and close. So he took it off of that, and he put it back in the garage. Well, I found out that he had opened a museum down there when I went down to visit his mom when she was 100.
Yeah.
Dad showed up for the 100th birthday, and I said, "Hey, Dad, there's a museum out there. I'm going to go out there. They're opening it for all the Civil War stuff found on Ship Island." So for some reason, Dad didn't go. I think he stayed with his mom. So I drove out there with, was it your mom? Might have been your mom that went with me. I guess your mom went to the 100th party, yeah. Because you guys didn't go for some reason. Your mom didn't want you to go, that's right.
Where'd we stay?
She stayed there. I went by myself.
So the museum's no longer?
Well, the museum was built right on the ocean in a town just next to Biloxi called,
Patricia.
no, that's the other way.
Oh.
I forget what it's called. I'll think of it in a minute. So they built this big museum, so I go in there. Everything on display says donated by Herman Williams. Donated by Herman Williams. Donated by Herman Williams. Donated by Herman Williams. A lot of stuff wasn't, but a lot of stuff was.
Yeah.
So I went to the curator and I said, "Hi, I'm Jody Williams. My uncle was Herman." He's, "You're kidding." And I said, "No." He said, "Oh my God, he used to talk about you all the time." Because this guy had been the curator of this small museum. Well, they built a brand new one.
For years.
And I said, "Hey, we've got a bunch of this stuff we'd like to donate because we don't know what to do with it. Hundreds of bottles." "You're kidding." "No." I said, "We even got a dungeon door." He said, "Oh, nobody has a dungeon door. They were all burned up and destroyed years ago." I said, "I have a dungeon door." He said, "No, you can't have one." I said, "My Uncle Herman disassembled it, had it in his garage, put it back together. My dad took it to California." He said, "Well, draw me a picture of it." So I drew him a picture. He got out an old book, opened it up, and showed me pictures of the dungeons. He said, "Oh my God, you do have a dungeon door." And I drew the bars.
The tour guy said, "Oh, there was never dungeons here."
Yeah. So he said, "You really have it?" I said, "Yeah, and I've got a cannon shell from that cannon up on the upstairs. It's not," he said, "it all broke up in pieces." I said, "No, it's all together whole. It must have never been fired." So he said, "Well, when's your dad going to come?" And I said, "Well, he's planning on coming down maybe in about 6 months."
Yeah.
And this is before we moved to Florida. So I go back to California.
No, my grandpa took us there.
Yeah, I go back to California and I tell Dad about it. He said, "Oh, that's good. We can donate all this to the museum."
Todd rode across country sideways.
Because Dad wasn't going to have his big home anymore. He didn't have anywhere.
Yeah.
So you guys loaded a lot of the stuff into that truck.
Sideways, all the way across the country.
You had the cannon shell.
Jumpers.
You had the cannon shell, and you had the dungeon door in pieces,
Worst ride.
and lots of bottles and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Grandpa gets a letter in the mail. Now that cannon shell weighed about 60 pounds.
Yeah.
Deployed.
And Bob and I used to carry it to school, drop it, carry it, drop it, and use it as show and tell in 3rd grade and all that. It had a hole down the middle of it where they used to keep the gunpowder, and then they covered it up with the cap. Turned out the gunpowder was all still in there, and that was a live shell. We got a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers. Sorry we had to detonate your cannon shell. I told Dad, are you sure it's the same one?
You put flagpoles in it. You drop
Yeah, we
it
used
on
to
the
stick
ground all
we used
the
to
way
stick the
forward.
umbrella in it at East Christmas,
No
4th
way.
of July time, just to cover the table.
Oh my God.
And you would take it all the way to school and drop it all the way there for sure.
It was so heavy. But the guy showed us how they worked. That hole at the very bottom had a little bit of wax. And under that wax was about a pound of gunpowder. They put a cap on it, which was the same roundness.
Watch out, this guy's stopping.
I know. And on the bottom of that cap was flint. So when the tip of that hit something, the flint sparked inside and blew up the gunpowder.
Yeah.
That one evidently didn't get shot out.
So the museum, is it still there?
Well, the next time I came to Mississippi with Michelle, we were driving, and when we came back from seeing Daughtry in New Orleans, I said, let's go by that museum. I went to where it was, and it was gone, and I asked people, they said, oh, they had to evacuate during the last hurricane.
Can you tell us where it kind of was?
Nobody knew where, yeah, it was in, I'll think of the name of the town a little bit. So anyhow, it was called the Maritime Museum of something Islands. Something Islands. Those 6 islands out there are named one name.
Okay, like
And
Channel Islands or something.
Yeah, this one, there was Cat Island, Goat Island, Ship Island, some other island, some other island, some other island.
Right.
So they named them something islands. Well, that's what the museum was named after. Maritime Museum of such and such islands.
Right.
So
Well-
they evacuated it. They took everything and put it in storage somewhere, and they never rebuilt it.
Oh man, we gotta find out because that might be our stuff.
Yeah, it was donated to them.
Yeah, but if they're no longer existing and showing the art, then it's our property. They don't get to keep it and store it and not show it to the public. That's why we donated it.
Right. It's ours, though.